I'm going to be upfront with you. What I'm about to lay out is a plan, and like any plan, it carries real risk. But it's the closest thing I have found to a repeatable framework for building financial freedom with Bitcoin over the next 10 years. Hi. I'm Dr. Hunter Albright, Chief Revenue Officer at SALT, former banking executive and professor at the University of Colorado Boulder. Now, for nearly 30 years, I've worked at the intersection of credit, analytics, and emerging technology, from leading global portfolios in traditional finance to building Bitcoin-backed lending infrastructure today. And this channel is about helping you think clearly in a noisy world, understanding Bitcoin through structure, risk, incentives, and long-term value. So today, we're not skipping anything. Here's the full 10-year blueprint, the math, the mindset, and the mistakes you need to avoid. What retire actually means. First, I'd like to redefine retirement. Retirement doesn't mean doing nothing. It means your assets generate enough resilience and flexibility. You're no longer forced to sell your time to cover living expenses, and work becomes optional, not mandatory. So step one is clarity. How much does my life actually cost per year? Not aspirational spending, not lifestyle inflation, real, sustainable annual expenses. Let's say that number is $120,000 per year. The traditional financial world would say, you need 25x that amount invested to retire safely. That's the 4% rule framework. $120,000 times 25 equals about $3 million in assets. But Bitcoin changes how we think about this. Think in Bitcoin terms, not dollar targets. If I were serious about retiring on Bitcoin in the next 10 years, I would stop anchoring to a dollar number first. Instead, I'd ask, what percentage of the total Bitcoin supply do I believe I need to secure for long-term freedom? There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. That fixed denominator matters more than short-term price. Owning one Bitcoin today represents 1/21 millionth of the total supply. That scarcity forces long-term thinking. So rather than saying, I need $3 million, I'd ask, what level of Bitcoin ownership gives me the confidence relative to global adoption? Because retirement on Bitcoin is partly a bet that purchasing power increases over time. Aggressive accumulation phase. If the time horizon is 10 years, the first 5 years are all about accumulation. That means converting a meaningful percentage of your income into Bitcoin, reducing unnecessary expenses, avoiding lifestyle creep, and probably increasing income intentionally. If I'm serious about compressing a 30-year plan into 10 years, the lever isn't speculation, it's savings rate. If someone saves 10% of their income, retirement in 10 years is unlikely. But if someone saves 40 to 60%, now we're talking about something that is structurally different. High conviction requires high discipline. Volatility during this phase isn't a threat, it's an opportunity to accumulate, but only if your conviction is strong enough to stay consistent. Build a fiat stability buffer. This is critical. Retiring on Bitcoin does not mean ignoring volatility. Bitcoin can draw down 50 to 80% during some cycles. If I needed to sell Bitcoin during a severe drawdown to cover groceries, now that's not retirement, that's fragility. So what I'd recommend is building 12 to 24 months of living expenses in fiat or highly liquid, low volatility assets, and developing structured income streams such as consulting, part-time work, and other cash flow opportunities. This buffer prevents forced selling. The biggest risk to retiring on Bitcoin isn't the price, it's liquidity timing. Developing a non-selling strategy. If my goal is to retire on Bitcoin in 10 years, I wouldn't design a plan around selling the entire stack. I would design around minimizing liquidation. Why? Because selling reduces your exposure to the scarce asset. Instead, I would think in terms of strategic partial liquidation only during strong market conditions, potential yield from other productive assets layered on top of your Bitcoin stack, and staggered withdrawal strategies. This goal helps with sustainability, not the one big exit. Volatility stress testing. This is where most plans fail emotionally. If Bitcoin drops 60% in year 8 of your 10-year plan, what happens? If your conviction breaks during volatility, then the entire plan collapses. So I would stress test your psychology now. Can you handle multi-year drawdowns? Can you accumulate during downturns? And can you avoid over-leveraging during euphoria? Retiring on Bitcoin requires emotional durability. Without it, the volatility will force poor decisions. Lifestyle design matters. Retiring in the next 10 years isn't only about asset price appreciation. It's about designing a life that doesn't require constant capital depletion. The questions I would ask include, can you reduce fixed expenses? Can you live geographically flexible? Can you design income streams aligned with your interest? Can you separate status from spending? The lower your burn rate, the less Bitcoin you need. Freedom scales faster when expenses are intentional. Understand the macro bet. Now, let's be honest about what this plan assumes. Retiring on Bitcoin in 10 years implies continued global adoption, increasing institutional recognition, growing monetary premium, and expanding liquidity infrastructure. That all may happen. It may happen slower than expected. It may happen faster. But this is a directional thesis, not a guarantee. Anyone pursuing this path must understand that conviction needs to be grounded in research and not social media narratives. The 10-year outcome spectrum. In 10 years, one of three broad things likely will happen. Bitcoin significantly appreciates in purchasing power, Bitcoin moderately appreciates and stabilizes, or Bitcoin underperforms expectation. A serious plan accounts for all three of these potential outcomes. If it dramatically succeeds, retirement may come early. If it moderately succeeds, flexibility increases. And if it underperforms, you still have a savings discipline, a high savings rate, and optionality. The plan works best when it improves your life regardless of the outcome. If I wanted to retire on Bitcoin in 10 years, here's what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't gamble on short-term price swings. I wouldn't over-leverage. I wouldn't rely on perfect timing. But here is what I would do. I would save aggressively. I would think in Bitcoin terms, and I would build liquidity buffers, while I would stress test volatility, and I would design a lower lifestyle burn. And I would stay disciplined for a full decade. Retirement, especially accelerated retirement, is not about predicting the future perfectly. It's about building enough margin that the future has less control over you. Bitcoin for many people represents a new monetary foundation, but foundations only work if you build carefully on top of them. The question isn't, will Bitcoin let me retire in 10 years? The real question is, am I willing to live in a way that makes that possible? If you have found this useful, stay with us. Next, we'll explore, should you ever sell your Bitcoin? Because at some point, that decision becomes very real.